Welcome to the Concoction Podcast, where we talk about everything and anything. Today we have a special guest. We have Patti and Brandon from Cobalt Comics and Collectibles. Welcome.
How you guys doing?
Thank you. We're doing good.
Yeah.
Brandon's hiding off in the corner, as he often does.
It's quite all right. Our buddy Gabe is over there too, hiding with him. What's up, what up, my man?
We're gonna try to push them, make them talk.
Don't do it to Brandon. Just let him be.
We'll let him be. Now, if we get one comment from him and maybe one from Gabe, it'll be all right.
Yeah.
Or maybe a sound, a sneeze or something.
Something, right?
A win.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna talk about a little bit about comics, but I'm not sure if you have something, but let me. For me, because I'm not very into comics, I'm not very into superheroes or anything like that. So I'm more the one here. I'm gonna learn, So I'm the one who's gonna be here to get out the knowledge. You guys probably just talking. I will purely just be here to listen to it. So
definitely ask questions.
Let me ask. Yeah, let me ask. Let me start with how long you guys been doing the business of comics?
Well, that's kind of, I feel like, a complex question, because the business of comics, I feel like, starts when you're a kid. Just the idea of escapism and the ability to relate to adults on those kind of levels, But I think it's two different kind of journeys. So we'll start with Brandon's. Brandon started when he was, mid-20s? And he really started with coins, and he kind of got that adrenaline rush from selling a coin and finding a collectible coin and working with his brother who owns a coin shop. And so he decided, I can kind of apply this to comics. And he worked at a comic book store down in Westminster with a guy who owns it named Craig. And Brandon, being Brandon and his work ethic, he quickly kind of rose to the top of that arena, and really found a love for comics and the trade of comics and that kind of bartering that you can really only get with comic book selling and trading. So, and then me personally, I grew up as a foster kid, so that just being able to escape into any different reality and have relatable people that you see a lot, like the orphans in comics and the bad people who are still good, and so just having that escapism and growing up with that was really nice, especially when you already kind of live in the world of hard knocks. So
right,
it was super nice. And then me and Brandon met about 3.5 years ago, and Brandon just was like, I'm gonna start a comic book store, and I'm like, all right, let's do it. so
that's part of the reason why I asked them in. You guys are awesome, first of all. And second, the way you brought it out when I first met you and then met you, I was like, we had to have you in, because it was like, how can someone so young and be inspired? And we also want to promote local businesses. Mm-hmm. So to hear a little bit about how you guys got going, it's really, really cool. And we'll go a little bit deeper into that. We're also going to touch a couple things, because I'm sure you guys know a lot more than we actually do on this subject. And now's the time to talk about the big movie that just passed, Captain Marvel. We'll ask your opinion about that a little bit, and also the age-old question, right? Marvel or DC? And I'd like an intake on someone that has your type of knowledge on that, because I'm more of a fan, but just like a regular fan. And we wanted to, like me and Christian, like promoting local business and stuff and having cool people in our podcast. And now that you started the intro on yourselves, we wanted to tell you kind of why we had you over. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, you're good. Hey, you know what? Thank you for promoting local business, because like with giants like Amazon and Walmart, just getting that, $20 sales. I don't know if you've ever seen a sign, but it's basically when you go to Walmart, you're buying some guy's yacht. And when you go to a local business, you're buying your daughter's dance lessons. And that's very true to us. Our money goes to our family and our community and karate classes down the street and stuff like that. So definitely.
That's cool.
It's been hard.
Huh?
It's been hard to have a business like comics. I mean, comics has been in a big deal right now. I think I was listening to one of the interviews to one of the comic owners in California, and they were talking about how the Big Bang Theory had a big impact in their business. Because starting that show, like a lot of people start getting more into comics.
I think definitely with like the Marvel, Marvel Cinematic Universe or the MCU, has definitely helped push that comic wave. I think a lot of people who wouldn't normally have been into it are, dazzled by characters that they didn't quite understand or, they didn't know.
And the sales of comics had gone down so much, right? From, you're talking the 1980s, 1990s had a real big boom. But since this cinematic universe started, like the comic books themselves have kind of settled. So it's awesome to see these superhero movies and, like he said, the Big Bang Theory bringing up comics again. I'm sure that helps your business.
Definitely. I noticed there's kind of like a score, like old school nerds. Like if you grew up a nerd, kind of like I did, there's kind of like this deep sense of like, I grew up getting beat up for this, you know what I mean? And now everybody thinks it's cool. So it's kind of cool to grow up and be like, you know what, I was the cool kid. You just didn't know it yet. But definitely, the Big Bang Theory is definitely, I hear a lot of, that's like the Big Bang Theory. Like,
yeah. I mean, that would be one of the reasons for me to actually go to the comic store for a person that doesn't know about comics. Right. Because I watched that show and I was like, that would be interesting to go check it out. And to me, little things like that. I'm more into music, and every time there's even their dumb movies, like I didn't like Bohemian Rhapsody, but I know that movie will bring a lot of more attention to people to go back to listen to Queen. Right. So to me, I was like, great. It works for me. I didn't like the movie, but great. It helps. So
most definitely. I didn't see that movie, to be honest with you. But yeah, I've heard a lot of really great things about it. And something interesting that I read, and we talked about this too, is Emmy-nominated movies, particularly, they tend to go back and make a bunch more money. So when Black Panther came up for an Emmy, I was like, Brandon, you need to make sure that we have some good Black Panther gear, because if they win, people are going to be looking for it.
Right.
And even if they don't, right?
Right, exactly. Well, and Black Panther on its, was his own level. And that movie was kind of a very good example of what the MCU and Marvel and all those producers can really make out of a movie. And it's a shining example of why the MCU is such a powerhouse and has become such the powerhouse it is today.
I couldn't ask for a better transition than what you just did. And that'll bring up I want your take on Captain Marvel. I know I saw it. I'm pretty sure you guys saw it too. I know it had some controversy to it, and I know it had it was one big step before the grand Marvel finale, right? Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
So I wanted kind of your guys's, or maybe your opinion on, if you like it. Was it a little too much? What part did you like? And I'd love to hear your take on that.
So my question is your controversy on like the SJ or the social justice warrior aspect of it with Brie Larson, where she was really vocal about the males or the male-dominated world, or is it more?
Just trying to get your microphone in front of you.
The controversy, let me clarify. It's not my personal controversy, but I know it was a subject that has been brought on by people, and I'll give you my personal take. Mm-hmm. Christian, I know you haven't seen the movie, so during the movie there was some. As Brie Larson, the main actress, she also announced it to be like it was going to push feminism, and she didn't mean it in a bad way. She just announced that it would be a good movie for women in particular, feminist movement. So there was a few scenes in there that showed that, and it showed it clearly. So the controversy, not me personally, but around was it too much, or what was even the point of that? And I'll give you my personal take. I felt like I didn't have an issue with those moments in the movie. Mm-hmm. The only reason why I kind of felt like there was an issue is because I had an issue with her acting in the first place. I felt like she was very bland as a character. I wasn't able to connect with her in all her phases, right? When she was just, and spoiler alert, right? I'm sure at this point a lot of people have seen it, but when she was just Carol, when she had amnesia, when she remembered that she was Carol, in all her stages, I couldn't connect with her character. So when these little power
moments of glory,
where these little power movements, and they included some kind of feminist lesson, I felt like I was already not connecting with her, and it felt a little too much. Like it wasn't necessary. It didn't help the story, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. You know, we saw opening night, so I've had a couple weeks to kind of really think about where it maybe had its pitfalls.
Yeah.
And I think one of the main things is that they really pushed the social justice warrior like feminism idea, but they pushed the 90s version of it. So I think they wanted to kind of go back and have that backlash of the 90s version of it. And I feel like 90s version of, the feminist movement is very through a men's kind of lens.
Gotcha.
And so when you put a lens of feminism with kind of a male idea of it, I feel like a lot of the male pushback is that women get called out a lot or catcalled, or they get told not to do something and they have to, And so I think the problem with that is that you're not fleshing out your character, Carol Danvers, in a kind of in a way that would do her justice. What you're doing her is you're making her an icon before she ever had the ability to be an icon.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So when you really kind of push this idea that she's this feminist movement and, she's going to be this feminist icon, but you don't really kind of push what she's done to make women more applicable in like the Air Force or in space, then what you're doing is putting her on a mantle she doesn't necessarily deserve.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? And I think that's where a lot of the problems kind of lie with this movie is they want her on a mantle, but they didn't take the steps to put her there.
I agree.
Does that make sense?
I agree. And Christian, I'll bring you in on it.
I was about to say, you guys already ruined the movie for me. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry, friend.
No, I'm just kidding. I still watch it.
In fact, the question was going towards that, like boys on the side and Chris, like as men and as movie buffs, I mean, that we all are, would you have an issue with that? Like, not only did we already saw it, right? But we already knew that was going to be like that. Do you have an issue seeing it now that you know it kind of has that going on?
Well, it kind of sucks because I'm gonna be looking for.
Oh,
right.
I'm gonna be like, where they're talking about, what's the part they're talking about. But I mean, if it goes well with the story, I don't have a problem with it. As long as it don't come out like they're forcing this issue to be in the movie.
And I don't think they necessarily force the issue. I think it just feels lacking is what it feels like. It feels like a big buildup, and then you come out and it's a great movie. Like it's a really fun movie to go see. But if my daughter were to come up to me and be like, what is a movie that I can watch that's a really powerful woman, I wouldn't say Captain Marvel. You know what I mean? I'd be like, it's a fun movie to watch, but I wouldn't.
That's interesting. And
right.
And would you, like, if your daughter did do that, I think we're connected, man. That my next question I wrote down here is comparisons to Wonder Woman. So now that you brought that up, bringing up another perfect transition, how would you recommend, or would you tell her Wonder Woman is a good example of that? Or how do you think Wonder Woman did without even trying to do that? It just told a great story from a strong woman.
I think so. A lot of people are comparing, I think, Wonder Woman to Captain Marvel. And the thing about Captain Marvel, so Captain Marvel had a co-director who was female, but it was also directed through a male lens. And I think that was maybe one of the pitfalls. I think also that when the director, Patti, I can't quite remember her name, but her name was Patti something.
I want to say it ends with Labitsky or something like that, but I could be guessing completely.
I'm not sure. When that director took over Wonder Woman, she went in with a very big intent, and the intent wasn't necessarily make Captain Marvel a feminist icon. The intent was make Wonder Woman. Sorry, my bad. Wonder Woman. Make Wonder Woman a relatable female.
Gotcha.
And the way I kind of compare it is, so let me ask you a question. Do you ever go into like a movie, like a Marvel movie, like Iron Man, for example? When you came out of Iron Man, were you ready to just, like, I'm ready to fight, like I'm pumped?
Like it gets your juices.
Yeah.
You saw Dark Knight, and you've recently seen Black Panther. Did it make you feel something like that, or?
Yeah, I felt like when I saw Dark Knight to get a nurse costume.
A nurse costume that
Start blowing stuff. No.
That's pretty funny.
the Joker inspired you.
Yeah, the Joker inspired. No, I mean, it's a movie. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's people up there that might came out and with the idea to,
Feel stronger.
about
I think
that.
emotional, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
there's people out there, definitely they would take movies like that. I personally, to me, movie is a movie and it's
Right.
just entertainment. So at the end of the day, I'm not planning to be like, oh yeah, there was 100% of real fact in the movie. Oh,
Right.
that movie is 100% real. That I need to do things like that.
And I'm not necessarily like, saying like, oh, you should go out and ready to fight. I'm just saying come out and your adrenaline and your heart was pumping and you were like, yeah, this is a really great movie.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about
I
it.
think I know what you're saying, and I compare it to like being maybe what she's portraying is like when we were little. When I was little, I felt that a lot. So
Yeah,
like
when you're little.
you get excited, and maybe that's what they were going for, a younger demographic. As an adult watching something like Dark Knight or something like that, it just makes me want to work out. Like it gives you that manly
But
feeling.
it inspires something in you.
true.
Like you watch that movie and you come out of it and you're inspired by it.
True, absolutely.
And so that's kind of the difference between Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman is like coming out of Captain Marvel, I'm like, that's a great movie. It's fun to watch. It's really entertaining. But Wonder Woman, like I came out and I'm like, we're buying that movie. And I was like ready to fight. I went home and like did ninja moves because I was so inspired by it. And it's because like, I don't see that as a female. Like, I don't really see, like, I can name, like, Domino was a really good movie. Wonder Woman. But there's, like, a handful, you know what I mean, of movies where there's really powerful women who are represented as just really powerful women. And they have pitfalls. And, like, one of my favorite scenes is Wonder Woman is when, like, this big, powerful woman walks up and she's like, oh, a baby. You know what I mean? Because it shows that she's still human.
She could still be vulnerable. That's I don't know if you saw Wonder Woman. I'm obviously not a woman.
Right.
And even I felt some of that. Like I instantly thought I need to buy this movie. I think I watched it 3 times at the movies, and I'm a guy.
Right.
Because it wasn't like I thought it had a message. It was more like this human is kick-ass. And a lot of the positive things that people say about Wonder Woman is that not only is she a goddess and strong, but because they built her character in the movie, they allowed her to be vulnerable.
Right.
She had a romantic interest. She was vulnerable. Like you said, she had cute baby moments, and she dealt with fashion. But at no point did she sacrifice her womanhood or her goddess status or her strength.
You know what's really funny about when you say fashion? Cool thing about me, I'm a seamstress. I'm a professional seamstress. And one of my favorite moments in the movie is when they're doing that montage of her putting on like different like 1950 clothes. And she's like up trying to kick in them and she's stretching out and she's ripping out of them. And it was kind of a nice ode to a lot of restrictions that women kind of are presented with. And not in like an in your face like way, like with Captain Marvel, where they have a lot of guys being like, hey baby, what's up? But just kind of in a very subtle, like even the clothes that women wear even today are really restrictive.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's
so Chris,
I was sorry. I was going for the negative part. Like if you're coming out of the movie and getting the negative emotions out of the movie, that's why I mean, because I do get that. Those emotions you get. I mean, any good movie you will get some type of emotion like that. You know, it's like kind of an example of what I was saying with Bohemian Rhapsody. People went watched the movie and came out and like, oh, I'm gonna listen to Queen, and that's what a movie creates. You know,
it actually brought it up, right? It came back to the charts, I think.
Movie. There's sold millions again. So and you get those positive, emotions out of those movies, especially if like they're action movies, and like you're saying, you probably feel like empowered, and like, wants to do things, you know. At least, I mean, sometimes it's positive, like very, very positive. Some people,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of women up there that were like, you know what, I'm gonna start exercising. I'm gonna get and start, you know, learning martial arts, things like that. You know, I mean,
Well,
sorry, are you okay after that night? No,
Were
nothing
you damaged?
happened.
Did I fight you after that?
Yeah, I know.
He was actually, he thought it was hilarious. He was just, I was like, I'm so pumped. But,
I think that was funny. He said, are you physically okay? Did she attack you?
Like, try.
I
Use
think
your code word if you need out.
It's the safe word, right?
Blink twice.
Blink twice to be okay.
She makes it super hard. She's like, recite a poem and I'll know I should stop. And he's just like, what the hell?
I'm not giving ideas. No, nobody should learn martial arts.
So I think in conclusion to our little Captain Marvel review or whatever, it's not the message that they were saying that was bad. It was just the convoluted way that they brought it out.
Right,
They
the
coulda-
presentation.
Exactly. It could have been more smoother with Wonder Woman. But that brings up when you try to just do a good movie,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times whatever message you're sending is stronger. Like Black Panther's a good example.
Right.
Like I'm sure they had their agenda, their message, but it didn't feel pushed. It didn't feel forced. I at no point did I feel any connection to any specific country. I just was happy that someone kicked ass.
Yeah, I did feel like it was pushed though, but I didn't know the story behind Black Panther because I didn't know not much about like the whole comic and how they were so into social.
So some
aspect.
history about the comic. Sorry to interrupt you, but actually, it's actually super kind of offensive, that comic is. Because they wrote it back when, you know, being black was kind of taboo, which I don't want to say that being black is taboo. Don't think that. But
Right.
kind of when segregation was a thing. And so like Wakanda isn't even really a country.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it was kind of going in and hearing about what they were going to do with Black Panther. I was really interested to see how they were going to kind of avoid a lot of the pitfalls
Right.
and avoid kind of that racism stamp.
Sure.
And when I saw what they had done, I mean, I was impressed. And my hope is that people of color, people of all colors, went into that movie and came out feeling empowered and felt that inspiration, because there is a real kind of what's the word? Acceptance. There's a real kind of deep understanding of seeing people who look like you on a screen do amazing things on a screen.
And you don't even have to look like them. I honestly left that movie feeling good about life, good about the movie. It was a strong movie.
Yeah, it was. And
they're throwing them at us. A lot of these movies are coming at us, including
shining example. Yeah,
exactly, including one that Christian, maybe we should go see it, Gabe. But I hate to put it this way, but I want to get your take on the original Captain Marvel, Shazam. Are you excited about that?
Okay.
So DC's version of Captain Marvel, or the original version.
The original actual Captain Marvel.
The original Captain Marvel is Shazam, and he's it's a new movie coming out. And
Zachary Levi.
True.
So I adore Zachary Levi. He actually played in a really nerdy. So The Big Bang Theory. If you're really into The Big Bang Theory, I would suggest you watch a show called Chuck. I think you can find it on Amazon Prime, but it's another one of those odes to like really nerdy movies or really nerdy shows, or to the nerd culture in general. And it's hilarious. It is one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. It was on NBC for like a 5-year run, but Zachary Levi starred in that show. So he kind of definitely has the cred to back up playing a character like this. But as far as the movie goes, I'm so excited to see it. I cannot wait to see what they've done with, you know, that character and how they kind of play into.
What was the reason why this one is the original? Did something happened? There was a fight.
It's
breakup.
It's a rivalry.
It's a rivalry, but what the way, and you guys could correct me, but the way I understand it is, many years ago, and I'm talking like maybe the 40s, around then, DC Comics had Captain Marvel, which is now Shazam, but at some point the comic went dormant, like they didn't use it too much. So 15, 20 years passed, and
Marvel had already trademarked it.
And Marvel went in and bought the name, like, you know, because those kind of things expire.
Oh.
It's like having a business and then you're you know, and Marvel bought the title. So once they wanted to use the original Captain Marvel again, it was not there anymore. So they had
copyrighted, copyright now.
They had to use a different name. And they used the name that is used in the comic, like when the character says Shazam, like he becomes something. So they thought, okay, we could use the name Shazam because we can no longer legally use the original, the name Captain Marvel. But apparently she's excited to, and I knew that because I asked you at the store. I could feel that you would be super excited about it.
Yeah.
I'm excited because I feel like it's going to bring, I mean, DC,
it's the lighthearted side
exactly.
to DC, I feel like, is what that's going to be. Because DC is very dark and heavy-handed. And I think that kind of speaks to who you are as a person, kind of in that.
And they had hit and miss. Their movies hadn't been so good, but they've been swinging for the fence. Wonder Woman, right. Aquaman. So like the very next thing coming, you're excited for it. Like Marvel's been kicking their ass for a little bit. So being a DC guy, I'm like they could have told me Shazam's coming out in a year and I'll be waiting for it. I'm excited, but I think general people should be excited because it's
the lighthearted
Shazam
side. Yeah, it's definitely the lighthearted side. You're gonna see the fun side of DC, which I mean you don't always often get, especially in the movies. You don't get a fun side of DC. They definitely try to bring you more of the darker stuff, as like with the Dark Knight and the Batman series. And even like Superman, I feel like is kind of a more lighthearted comic, but they make it really, really dark.
Really dark,
yeah.
And Shazam has that kind of story, man. It has like a friendly take on it. It's back when the comics were being sold, the way I understood it is, it wasn't owned by DC right off the bat, and they were selling way more comics than Superman for like 10, 15 years. Until DC was like, enough. Like, I mean, you're a copy of Superman and you're selling more comics than Superman. So what they did is what every big company does, right? They bought them.
Right.
So now we're going to watch Shazam. We're going to watch a DC character that was bought by DC because it was too big. It was getting in the way of Superman, right? So that in itself should bring people to the movies. It's a cool little anecdote.
Well, and definitely, I think it might be a good show for kids too, because it's a good example of how kids can change the world, even though, you know,
True.
They're small. And that's, I mean, Shazam, the premise of Shazam is that he empowers, at least in the movie, is that he empowers a kid. And anytime this kid says Shazam, he becomes a full-blown
and you mentioned
superhero.
I think I saw the trailer.
Yeah. And he's an orphan. And you mentioned that you're orphan. How do you feel about that angle of the movie?
Well, I'm not necessarily an orphan. I mean, both my parents are still alive. I
Gotcha.
still have contact with them. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, we could kind of go that route.
Okay,
you know,
take it, make it.
As seeing it in foster care for sure is definitely, because you know, foster care is it's kind of hit or miss. You can have a really great foster home with a great foster family, or you can have one of those parents who are like, I'm here for the money, and you know. I kind of landed somewhere in the middle where, you know, the foster moms that were there, I know they weren't involved. They were just two old ladies who lived together. Everybody asks me that, so I just have to clarify. But yeah, they were old. They were retired. They were making money off of having these girls in their home. You know what I mean? That's kind of was their retirement plan. But they were good people generally, if not overwhelmed.
Okay.
Which, when you have kids who've been emotionally damaged over long periods of time, as a lot of teenage years in foster care are,
right.
I can imagine that would be a handful in and of itself. So,
right.
But seeing kids in foster care, it's kind of a hard thing, because there are so many kind of backstories where you're in the foster system and it's a really depressing, sad thing, and you know, owning a business and living that kind of lifestyle, a lot of people are really shocked to learn that I had grown up in that kind of system, because statistically, you know, I should have been in jail or on drugs by now. You know what I mean? So just to be, and that's part of like with the comic book store. That's kind of what I want to promote, is that idea of community and being to come in. And if you're having a bad day, man, just come talk to us.
Come talk to us.
Yeah. Spend time with us. Come play a board game. You know, we're here to hang out with you. We're here. That's what our shop's here for. You don't have to just come and buy a comic. You can come sit here all day and
hang out.
And Brandon will paint with you, and we'll show you kind of like the Warhammer stuff and the, you know, and that's, we wanted a sense of community, and that's kind of where I always go, is a sense of community.
So
do you guys get a lot of kids that kind of go there looking for that?
So when me and Brandon actually started the store, my first thing to Brandon was, I don't want this to be marketed to those mainstream guys. Like, yeah, I want to respect them, and I want them to be able to come in and enjoy their time with us. But I want a little kid to come in and feel like, one, not have parents feel like, you know, if your kid touched something, you're going to be spending $400. So we were very conscious of that, and making sure that anything that was really expensive went behind a glass case or on a shelf that they can't reach. So that way, if a parent walks in, they're not worried about damaging $400 worth of Infinity Gauntlet. You know what I mean? So that was very much an intent. And we see a lot of little kids who come in and they're like, My Little Pony, this is so awesome. Or, you know, really making that connection with, you know, pop culture and Spider-Man and just the different characters and things we have.
Do you guys have all the type of comics, from like the typical Marvel, DC to random stuff?
I mean, we have your independents. We have kids. So we have just a whole table for kids, and a whole kind of slot for kids to kind of go pick through. We have your gory horror. We have your kind of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You know, your classic Marvel or DC Batmans, Supermans. Let's see, Captain America is one of my particular favorites. You know,
a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
You're in the right podcast.
Yeah.
A little bit of everything and anything. I stopped by their spot, and that's what I mentioned to them. Yeah.
So when you walk into our store, what's the kind of the feeling you get? That's kind of my question. When you, and this I think really tells to who we are. When you walk in, what do you feel? What do you see?
So what I told Brandon is the reason why I even wanted you guys in here is I stopped by, and just his friendliness came out. But I've been to other comic book stores. I won't mention them by name. And I'm not a big comic book go-to guy.
Right.
But like when I need to give a gift, or like in this case, I needed something for the podcast, and we got this poster from their shop, and we got this Black Panther. But I went to yours, and what first surprised me was how clean cut it is, how clean and neat it is. Because I was telling Brandon, I've gone to other comic book stores, and they smell like thrift stores. They're like, they have old posters crunched up in the corner. The carpet is dirty. So when I walked into your guys' place, the cleanliness was incredible. And Brandon mentioned it, and then I noticed it, is other comic book stores, you'll have to like Big Bang Theory, right? You'll have to go through books, but they put their books out in a way where each book that you're going to look at is looking at you. You see the cover. There's no boxes where you have to go through them. They're all staring at you, so you don't even have to like worry about what it looks like. And that impressed me, his niceness. And the fact, to be completely fair, is to see how young you were and you owned your own store. And it was a comic book store. I'm like, this guy's living the life, right? All he needs is like a 6-pack of beer here, and you know, a big pizza or something. It would make the ideal man dream. But yeah,
with 3 kids at home.
He goes to the store, he lives his moment, and then he throws it all out and goes home. Right?
There's definitely days I think Brandon's like, I don't want to go home to that chaos. And we were just joking the other day about putting a bunk bed in the back of the comic book store, and we would never see Brandon. Yeah. I would finally get to paint the house the color I want it.
Yeah. Why he didn't come back? He says the store is sleeping. It's having a break. I feel you, man. I have one, and I feel you.
I recommend, man, for you to take your little one, and me, him, all of us, we're not huge on this type of thing, but like Christian, me, any normal, average comic fan could go and enjoy it.
That's the other point that we really tried to, I think both of us push out there, was that being a comic book nerd or really loving pop culture can kind of come with a lot of intimidation. Like, you walk into a comic book store and you haven't been there before and you don't know what you're doing, and you're a little terrified because you're like, I don't know this guy, and he's using acronyms I don't know, and he's talking about things I don't understand.
Right.
And that's nerve-wracking, and it's definitely a turnoff when you know.
And you come off as being of the people. And I know I make that sound dramatic, but what I mean by that, I've gone to other comic book stores. For example, I was going to give a female friend of mine, she was getting married, and she's into Harry Potter, and she loves comics, and she loves superheroes. And I thought I'd buy her a gift, but I wanted it to be about a marriage. So I go to this comic store and I say, hey, do you guys have a particular story that has to do with love or heartache or marriage? And the guy that spoke to me like sent me to the moon with what he was saying. He was like, yeah, in the edition 700, blah, 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 of so-and-so and the Green Goblin of Love. And I'm like, okay. I just thought he would be like, yeah, this is a nice love story. But he went into huge detail. So I appreciated it. Your come down to my level.
And I think that's important especially if it's people who's trying to learn about comics, who's trying to, find out, or starting, to get into comics. You want somebody who's not very judgmental and be more like, let me explain, let me start you with something that's easier. Yeah.
They call it gatekeeping. And it's these guys who kind of are like, oh, it's ours, it belongs to us. And they kind of catch you sometimes.
Right. Yeah. And because we have this type of people that will like sometimes will get you, straight to the hardcore stuff. And you're like,
soft landing.
Take me slowly, grab my hand and walk
guide
me.
Guide me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get him more into like, you guys are at a different level. I'm way lower and he's even lower. So I'm trying to get him to my level as Gabe tries to get me to like watch these old movies. Like, we're all trying to get each other to like go out of the box and like something else. So
that's the thing about pop culture though, is that a lot of pop culture is how we relate to each other.
Right.
And so if what we're doing with our pop culture and our icons like Superman and our movies that we really, really like, if we're excluding people from that, then what's happening is we're basically excluding ourselves from the opportunity to, present or to get a fresh idea or to get a new take. I mean, how wonderful would it be if you had, a million different artists of a million different backgrounds writing a million different stories about the different lives that you could be leading, and then putting it into like a comic book form.
And it goes in all areas. Christian brought up, maybe you could tell us a little bit, but I know you've mentioned to me that it's not only comic books. He says that part of the reason why he gets mad at, he's big into heavy metal and he'll go to concerts he mentioned that he gets mad at certain people that exclude other people that aren't as hard at these concerts and stuff. Maybe you could touch on that.
Yeah, and it happens in all this type of things like movies, music, and comics. Probably that we're like, there's some type of, I don't know if it's ego or this thing about loving this thing that you think it's only yours,
right?
And nobody else should touch it because it's gonna break it,
right.
Or if you touch it, it's gonna become popular and it's not cool anymore,
right?
And because you think it's cool if it's underground or if like nobody knows about it,
right.
It's like, why? Like, what's the point of that? I mean, I'm more like into, if somebody comes to me and like, oh, I want to learn about heavy metal, I was like, perfect, let me show you how you can start, and let me take you to concerts. I try to give you as many tools as I have, so that way you probably fall in love, and become another person, another fan.
If we all loved deep tracks only, there wouldn't be any tracks.
Yeah. And I think to me, that's probably what happens with comics, because when I probably years ago, when I trying to start it, even like check it out for a little bit, I wasn't around the right people. Like the people who was around me were probably a little too hardcore for me. So I was like, like it was boring, you know?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to jump in, and I was like, I ignored it completely.
Right. And it's hard too. It's hard to jump into something and feel like you're jumping in at the top, the highest tier, you know what I mean?
Right.
And you're expected to meet at that tier. And so, and I mean, and that, like I said, it happens in all forms of pop culture. And I feel like that might be a byproduct of the pop culture because it does feel like it belongs to you and it's a part of you. And, you remember as a kid listening to heavy metal and rocking out to like,
right.
Those
it's
emotions.
an emotional connections we have make us defend it more or like protect it more. We don't want people to destroy that memory of what it means to us.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you can have those emotions, just don't be an asshole about
Don't
it.
be a jerk.
Right, exactly. And that's,
don't
and
be
that's
a
the
dick.
thing
It's
is that's kind of what's happening, I feel like, a lot in this world. And that goes back to like what I was talking about earlier, where, a lot of old school guys were getting beat up back in the day for having comics in their backpack. And so now you kind of hit this point where like, you're like, man, this is the cool thing now and everybody's into it. But I was here first, man. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And
exactly. I know.
there's definitely a delicate balance between making sure that those guys still have, that we love them still. And we do. I mean, we love our epic nerds, you know what I mean? And we love having conversations and getting into theology and having those debates. But I also love having guys like you come in with your kids and introducing them to their first comic, whether it be Spider-Man or My Little Pony.
Archer.
Right.
Archie too, that's
That'd be my
Jughead.
comic.
Some good old Jughead.
and all the fighting's got to stop, man. And
For sure.
I guess I would hate myself if I didn't ask you this, but I just said fighting's got to stop, and I'm going to take us to another fighting question, but the age-old question for all of us. DC or Marvel? Which one do you prefer? Why? And like what the other needs to do to change, or where we stand on this?
I'm going to preempt this.
Okay.
So I think that DC and Marvel stand on their own legs for their own reasons. And I think that particularly this might be a DC Marvel marketing tool where they say you have to kind of pin yourself against each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, more loyal fans.
So I think that might be part of it. But I think that people are drawn to what speaks to them. And I think that DC has their own series of writers and their own series of artists and their own look and their own feel and their own kind of way about things, just as Marvel does, And I really do feel it speaks to you as a person, who you relate to. Because the honest to God truth is I love me a good villain. I will I can look at a movie, and Brandon right now, if like you can almost guarantee if I love a character, they're going to turn out to be the bad guy at the end of the movie. You know what I mean? And that's just who I am. And so DC to me has some like magnificent, kind of villains.
I had asked this question a lot to people. And when I was in their comic book store, we kind of talked or pre-touched this subject. Mm-hmm. And she answered something that I had never heard, and it's a great angle. And knowing you, Christian, I think you might like that type of angle. But she said that, because my argument was DC characters like Superman, Spider-Man, they could stand alone. And like Marvel characters have to, like, as you see, Marvel Universe, right? They have to have all these stories connected because their each individual stories don't make it so well. Like Iron Man was great, right? But Iron Man 2 and 3 weren't. Thor had 3 movies that maybe one was good.
Okay, I would like to debate that Ragnarok was one of the best Thor movies. So.
Right. But that was one movie, right?
Oh, that's true.
But he has 4.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to like DC characters, they could have a simple plot, but they could stand alone. And she gave the best answer to this. And she said, yeah, because DC characters have great villains. They could stand alone because the villain makes their story. And Marvel has, and I had never thought about that. And it was genius because it was true. Like I thought Marvel doesn't have like incredibly great villains, but DC does. Like Batman himself has like 7 of them.
Yeah. Like just the Joker. And here's a good example. Heath Ledger, when he played the Joker in The Dark Knight, it's The Dark Knight, right?
Yeah.
When he played the Joker in The Dark Knight, nobody walked out of that movie going, oh my God, Batman so wonderful.
Exactly.
Everybody walked out of there and they're like, that Joker was the best Joker. And you watched that movie for the Joker's performance. You even said the nurse's uniform. You don't remember Bruce Wayne of the, you know what I mean?
I don't even remember Batman at this point, actually, now that you say that.
You remember the Joker. And, that's the great thing about DC. And I feel like why a lot of people might kind of wish-wash back and forth, because Marvel has great heroes and they're great kind of standalone heroes, but they also have great heroes that intermingle together.
Right.
And like Bucky Barnes, he started with Captain America, back when Nazis were taking over the world, and then he comes back and he was a great kind of interwoven character to the Captain America series. But then like I would pay twice the amount of a movie ticket to see a good Joker story. Like just something based off the Joker and maybe some Batman thrown in, but I would pay a lot of money for
like DC villains are so good that Marvel's kind of beating them up a little bit on the cinema side of it.
If they flipped to the villain,
exactly,
they'd
murder. Their answer was exactly their answer was that Suicide Squad. They're like, how can we fight back? And they were like, well, we have fucking amazing villains. Right. Let's do a movie only of villains.
Well, and then you got Harley Quinn out of that. And the Harley Quinn that came out of that was, that is an iconic Harley Quinn. That Harley Quinn is going to go down in history as one of the most...
And beautiful.
Yeah.
And Margot Robbie is quite a beautiful woman.
I'm keeping my language clean. I wanted to say a little bit more about her, and not the nicest, decent way, but yeah.
You can tell it was good. She
can definitely make you think in decent things.
Yeah. Yes.
You can tell that it was good in Halloween. All the girls were.
All the
everybody
girls.
Was.
Well, that speaks to like women often are portrayed in very heroic lights, like Wonder Woman. And to see a woman who's devious and willing to take a baseball bat to someone's head, and all women think that. Like, there's not a day that goes by that I'm like, God, I could just scream at you. You know what I mean? Right. And to have, on the flip side, a woman that you can relate to who's a little bit more on the devious side, you know what I mean?
Right.
Is kind of nice, too.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
That was Suicide Squad, I'm not too sure was a great movie.
Oh, no, talking about Dark Knight.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But the idea itself was cool.
Yeah.
I think, if they had fine-tuned it a little bit more and fleshed out, because they really fleshed out Harley Quinn, which is probably why she was so relatable, but took some more time to flesh out those other characters. Like, had they done what Marvel did and made a whole bunch of standalone movies about, like, Deadshot and Harley Quinn.
Exactly.
And that,
and they could. They have a history of writing great stories for their villains and the heroes. I think DC just needs to slow down. And my question was going to be that, like, what do you think DC could do to fight back, or at least to come back to an even ground?
Well, The Dark Knight, I feel like, might have been part of the trigger for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that Marvel saw that. Well, you have Spider-Man, of course, and Marvel saw that was a big hit, and they kind of rolled with that too. But they have all the makings for great stories. I think that they need to do, like with Wonder Woman, what they did, where they really sit down and are very conscientious of what they're doing with their characters and where their characters are going, and kind of have a much deeper long game.
Right. And Chris, I'll ask you the same thing. For someone that's like not into comics, not into superhero movies and stuff, like when it comes to that, what brings you out? Like, what would take you to a comic book store? What would take you to watch a superhero movie? Like, what in the most general basic fanness that you are, which is a low level, like what actually brings you out?
I don't think there's level for the low.
There's
older I am.
There's
right now
no lower.
Comics,
Low man.
No, like any movie, I think as long as the story is good,
you
can enjoy the movie To this point, I don't even know exactly who's Marvel, who's DC. So
Gotcha.
That's how low is my level of that. But I watch the movies, and if it's a good story, I enjoy the movie.
I think you're in a good place though, because
Right.
honestly, going in and enjoying those movies like Batman and Captain Marvel without that prejudice is a
Exactly.
good place to be. If you want my opinion, to just go and enjoy it without having that
Because
predetermined.
there's no prejudice. You're looking for a good movie, a good story, and I think your comic book innocence or your comic hero innocence is awesome, and I actually envy that. Like I think I always go in knowing a little too much, so I'm like, no, that's not right. Like everything is judgmental.
Right.
So for me to actually like a superhero movie, it has to be like really, really good.
pristine.
Yeah. So for you, I think you could walk out thinking it was just okay and enjoy the afternoon, and that's it.
Yeah.
I envy that
I
innocence.
move on with my life.
Okay.
What's next? What's the best movie for you so far? Superhero movies, the best one so far.
That's a good question.
So, Brandon knows right now. Do you wanna say it, or do you wanna know?
Scream it.
It's Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Oh wow! Just saw that last night. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Brandon knows I'm having a bad day if he walks in and the Winter Soldier's on. He's like,
what
here's a
happened?
blanket, here's a burrito. What happens? And I just, there's something about Bucky Barnes in particular, and I'm so excited that Marvel actually has like a new run happening of his, that I just, growing up, I always kind of felt like the bad kid, just that kind of predetermined idea of being a foster kid and what it means to be scrappy and have to, fight for what you get and stealing food out of trash cans and stuff. And so just knowing that there's a guy out there who did, bad things for all the right reasons, and I could relate to that is really kind of phenomenal in my opinion. And having Captain America too, who's this guy who stands up for what he believes in no matter what,
Right.
is kind of a nice writer to have on that.
That's an interesting choice.
What about you?
That is an interesting choice. I liked it. I would say I guess I'll give you a quick top 4.
I say
Top
one.
3.
No.
I know. Don't take it too far.
You can't just pick one.
I know we're talking comics, and he asked the wrong question. I could stay here all night, but the Dark Knight, the Batman Dark Knight is possibly the highest, maybe Wonder Woman, and
I'd put the Dark Knight at my number 2.
yeah,
for sure. 'Cause
Dark Knight and Black Panther. And I'm talking like right now, these recent ones.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, so far, because I know there are more movies
I
coming.
think
but so
another
far-
one of my favorite ones was Iron Man.
True.
And so here's the thing with Captain America, the Winter Soldier, the planning that went into that movie, like watching Captain America jump out of that, I can't remember what it's called right now, forgive me, but watching him jump out of that and fall that thing, that was perfect planning, because how else are you going to explain that Bucky Barnes fell all that way? You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was just a masterpiece. And who the hell is Bucky? You know what I mean? Like, who comes up with that? But it's kind of the same thing with those Iron Man movies, man. They had that long game. And the other thing I was going to say about Marvel, now that I think about it, is they integrate with pop culture. So the cool thing about Iron Man, the first Iron Man, is they took something that we were really in the depths of, like really depressed about, which was the Iraq War and being
Right.
over there. And they made it an entertaining thing. And they made, Tony Stark, who in the comics isn't quite the redeemable character he is in the
Right.
movies. And he...
They've mentioned that, like coming into this episode, I read up. Actually, there was another podcast I was listening to, literally called DC versus Marvel or something like that. And one thing they did bring up was part of the reason why Marvel is kind of ahead of the game is what you're mentioning, is that they choose to become us, to become one of the people. So like their stories you could read. They're in New York. Their city's called New York. They'll battle in New York. They'll deal with our problems. Iron Man was in the Middle East, while DC will have made up cities like
Right.
Gotham. And,
which is technically New York City, but
right, but they don't quite touch it. You know, that it's a. I guess Black Panther was also made up, but it's in a different continent. But when they're in America,
but that's the thing about Black Panther. The other thing that was tricky about them, even though the country wasn't make up, they took the costume design in that movie. And as a seamstress who like watches movies and is like, that patch is on wrong, the costume design and even with Killmonger, where you know all the scars, that's an actual ritual they do in African countries. So they took a lot of time to really kind of relate and integrate themselves into that society.
And we didn't mean to skip you on that, man. What for someone at your at your level,
I'm still Superman 1980, 9, 6, whatever the first
the
Superman came out. Still love that movie.
I've actually heard a lot of people say Superman 78, man. Is one of their favorite. That's probably the one you're talking about.
Is that the Chris Reeve one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people said that's the best Superman story ever told was 1978, that movie.
Whatever year was that? Yeah. To me, I still like, I mean, it's not like I go back and watch it many times. If it's coming, if it's in one of the channels, I will watch it. But it's not like I buy it or anything like that.
But I like that. I like the innocence of the answer. It's like, it made me feel something. It's an older movie, but it made me feel something. And that's cool.
I'm pretty sure if I will watch more superhero movies nowadays, I'd probably be like, nah, you know what? Never mind. You know, like Dark Knight probably is my favorite. Like, you know, if you actually analyze more new movies, and I think the whole story is great. But I don't know. I mean, I'll need to watch more movies, I guess, in order to say yes, this is my favorite one. But I guess that's
gotcha.
I would say if you were going to do that, start at the Iron Man movie, because if that movie doesn't inspire you to watch the rest of the Marvel kind of universe,
I watched Iron Man 1.
You?
Yeah. I like it.
It wasn't bad, huh? Yeah, I liked it too.
It's a good starting point, I feel like, because it gives you kind of an idea of where you're gonna be headed.
If I could recommend any Marvel ones, I would. There's only a few that I would say this is absolutely great. Well, you know, Black Panther, Guardians of the Galaxy, and the first Iron Man, and those are like, you can't miss those. The other ones you could kind of like go with it or not go with it, but those three for me are the have to sees.
So based on what I'm talking about, me not knowing anything about this, I'm more like a DC guy. Oh,
Probably.
Cool.
And that makes two. I'm a DC guy. Or did you officially say you're Marvel DC?
Like I said, I can't pick because I flip and flop and I pick.
She's from Switzerland.
I'm Switzerland. Well, the thing is I don't want to be like, I love Marvel and then have guys come in and be like, well, you're a Marvel store. You know what I mean? And right. Like that, part of that is that. True. But the other part is that I love all comic books, which is why I bust my hide in a comic book store with my boyfriends 5 days, 6 days a week.
Such a romantic story. I know you gave us a little bit of detail on that, but like, is that really what brought you guys together, was the love for comics?
So Brandon's side of the story is actually really funny because we met on Tinder. And his joke is always swipe right. Haha, funny. But so yeah, we met on Tinder, and our first date was at like some brewery thing in Westminster by the AMC theaters. I'm sure he knows what it is, but I can't remember. And we go in there, and Brandon kind of came up in a very kind of preppy household. He played soccer. All his friends were really preppy. And so we go into this thing, and he starts talking about comics and all this stuff, and I just haul off. And all of a sudden, like, he's talking to a girl who maybe knows more than him. And I don't in his face, he looks like, I'm not sure I'm ready for this.
He's like thinking, what did I do?
He thinks like, I got this.
And I think in his heart, he was like, yeah, finally someone who gets my love for this.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely comics brought us together. And it was so funny because our first date was to the Star Trek movie.
Wow.
So it was definitely.
Man, this is like the nerdy geek, like temple of like history. Yeah, this is awesome, man.
Yeah. And and what's really nice is that he kind of morally, because comics, we get a lot of our morals from comics too, right? Because they teach us moral lessons. That helps us kind of morally align in how we raise our children, which he adopted because he's an amazing human being, and God, I don't know how he does it, but
we have a true superhero in our midst, man.
Yeah, I know. Brandon's an amazing guy. But yeah, I mean, and here's the thing with our kids. The oldest has like a heart condition, and so the middle he's got ADHD, and so we struggle with those balances quite a bit. And opening the store, I know he kind of at first was like, is this something I'm going to be able to do? And without the support of our kids coming in and helping us out and teaching them and me and him just kind of being that pillar for like, yeah, we're going to get this done. We probably wouldn't be here today, but Brandon is definitely the leader in the family. If I'm anything, I'm probably the pit bull, so I'm there ready to tear someone's leg off at any given point. But definitely, comics are what brought us together and are, talked about quite often, and we share it with our children. And I know Brandon recently, his big thing has been Dragon Ball Z and sitting down with our kids every night and watching 1 or 2 hours of Dragon Ball Z and making those jokes and just kind of having that cool pop culture reference to hang out with them at.
You couldn't pay for this nerd. You couldn't pay for this nerd love story.
Someone should write a comic about us.
I can't. It's so good. I can't even find the right words to describe that. Like people that are into comics. I'm not at your level, not even close. But like people like you couldn't dream of something like this. This is really cool. Yeah.
That's cool.
Really cool.
Brandon's over there nodding his head. He's super cute right now. That's Brandon's like, I'm so proud and embarrassed at the same moment face.
Right.
Are you sure? Blink. Remember?
Blink twice if you need help.
Blink twice if you need help. Yeah. We couldn't.
A Wonder Woman movie. God damn it. Is that the movie you hate? No, I was kidding.
He bought that movie and actually made our daughter watch it, I think, because
nice.
he wanted her to feel that kind of same thing that I felt. And we definitely, I mean, that's another thing about Captain America I loved is Gemma, who has a heart condition, Captain America, before he becomes Captain America,
right,
has heart conditions and health issues. And so it's a good, whenever we're down, my daughter can watch that too. She'll watch the first one and she'll remember like, hey, even though I have these issues,
Right.
That's cool. Are your kids into all the comics and everything? Or?
Yeah. So our kids have gone to, I think this will be like their 5th con. And I mean, my middle has gone since he could barely even walk.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
So they have been deeply, deeply integrated into what comic books are and how they function. And I'm sure they're going to grow up and be probably the next master generation of comic book nerds, and hopefully the dream is that they can take over the store and kind of hit the ground running with it.
That's cool.
So is it a franchise store? Did you think of the name? Is it your store, or you bought into the store?
I say we. Brandon did a lot of the work because I work full time on top of working for the comic book store. So Brandon used to melt gold for a living, and he was like, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. And so one day he was like, you know what, I'm quitting. And he paired up with his dad. So this is kind of, at this point, we're working with 3 generation, trying to get the store together. So it's been a real deeply family integrated thing. And we designed everything. And I mean, we would talk for hours about, do we want dark fixtures? Do we want it to be light? Do we want it to be airy? What colors do we want? How do we want the store to look? What kind of people do we want to invite in?
Right.
What's our center going to be? Where are we going to be grounded?
Right.
What are our morals? And what we basically came down to is we want it to be a family business. We want everybody to walk in, whether you're black, white, gay, straight, the bottom of the totem pole or the very, very top of the totem pole, and feel like you're welcome and your family. And,
I think you've achieved it, man. That's exactly the feeling I got. And I'm happy to hear that you said it's a family thing. Are your parents into comics as well? Or are your parents or they're just into the business?
Brandon's dad, I think, as we go on, tends to he starts watching these movies, and he'll take the kids, and he kind of ruined the Harry Potter series for our middle child trying to be the cool grandpa.
Right.
But he comes 3 days a week. He comes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And if you ever come down on one of those days, you can meet Papa Blair, as I'll call him. And he's kind of grandpa comic, I guess, is what you can call him. Don't tell him I said that. And he's down there at the bottom of the totem pole learning with you guys. So he's definitely one of those guys who he owned like a big marketing franchise, and
wow.
Yeah, so he helped us build it from the ground up for sure.
That's so cool. We've talked it up. This is where I got this Black Panther from. That beautiful Wonder Woman back there. You guys got the stuff. So tell us how to get there. Tell us.
So it's actually really, really super easy. We're off of South Parker Road in Chambers, right there in the shopping center by the Walmart and the Home Depot. If you go across the street, you'll see a PetSmart, and we're 3 doors down. You can literally see our sign from South Parker Road. A good kind of point is we're right across the street from like the highway, I should say, from the Cherry Creek State Park's dog park.
Okay.
So if you know where that is, it's a good point of kind of reference.
What's the name of the store again?
And the store is Cobalt Comics and Collectibles, and it's the big yellow sign right off Parker Road.
Cool. Do you guys have social media?
We do. You can find us on Facebook. We have an Instagram. We've debated some podcast stuff and stuff like that, but I feel like that's a little bit farther down the road. So.
Gotcha.
Okay. How do you guys, they can find you in the social media?
So it's just Cobalt Comics and Collectibles.
Instagram.
Yeah. So if you search Cobalt Comics and Collectibles, you'll find us pretty easy peasy.
And I'm going to tag them. So if people that follow us want to know a little bit more about them, we'll tag you guys and put up some pictures and
I'm sure
they'll be able to find you.
You mentioned the podcast. Brandon will maybe throw in a sweet deal or two. So.
There you go.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming. Definitely, to me, it was a day to learn because
for sure.
Now I know I like DC. Somehow I ended in DC, but it's cool. But it was great. To me, it was more like learning.
Thank you, guys.
Today. Yeah.
Again, thank you. It was not only has it been my pleasure when I first met you, but it was pleasurable again, and thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. So.
And anyone who's listened to this episode, please follow us on social media, the Concoction Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, the Concoction One. And you can find this episode in Spotify, Stitcher, and iTunes. I'll say tomorrow on Wednesday. And the YouTube video of this episode you'll find the weekend, so you guys invited to see your faces. Well, not Brandon, yeah.
Right.
You guys,
but the way I've seen him smile at her this whole time, I'm sure he'll be just as happy watching that YouTube video.
And subscribe to our channel, the Concoction Podcast channel. It's very easy to find us, and hope people will like this. Subscribe.
Exactly.
Something else?
No, thank you guys again.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, thank you.